Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And thank you for joining this learning experience brought to you by Weaviate. My name is Cody, and welcome back to Techstrong Learning. We've got an exciting program ahead, but before we dive into things, I have just a couple of notes I'd like to review with everyone. First off, one of our speakers, Travis, he is in the middle of a windstorm, so in the off chance that he loses power, internet connectivity, we do have a pre-recorded version that we'll do our best to try to pick up on with our conversation, and we'll be sure to also send that out to everyone as well after the fact. But we're going to move ahead just like normal and hope that doesn't happen. So today's session is being recorded. If you'd like to watch again, if you'd like to share with the rest of your team, you will be receiving the recording via email shortly after we conclude this live session today. If you'd like to get involved, there are a couple of ways to engage with us. The first option is to use the chat tab on the right side of your screen. So when you find that chat tab, I'd like you to let us know from where in the world you are joining from today. Now, if you have specific questions, we'd like you to direct those to the Q&A tab on the right side of that chat section. Sending your questions to the Q&A just helps us keep track, and we truly want to do our best to answer as many as we can when they're relevant, so be sure to send those in as soon as you have them. Additionally, if you jump to that handout section, you'll see there are a couple of additional resources there, so feel free to grab those before we close things out. And we will be selecting 2 of our most engaged attendees today to win a $50 Amazon gift card, so be sure to send in your chats, your questions, and of course, fill out our post-webinar survey. So today's topic is how to build an AI native foundation for enterprise apps. I'm joined today by Byron Voorbach, Head of Solution Engineer at Weaviate. And we also have Travis Rehl, SVP of Product and AI at Innovate Solutions. So Byron, Travis, thank you both so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning. Byron, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Definitely. Thank you so much for that introduction, Cody. Let me just take over and start our screen share. Hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join and listen to me and Travis. As Cody mentioned, my name is Byron Voorbach. I'm the Head of Solution Engineering at Weaviate. I've been with Weaviate for almost 2 years, working together on our vector database. Just a quick note for people that don't know about Weaviate. Weaviate is a vector database that was founded in 2019. It's an AI native vector database. What that exactly means for people that don't know, we'll touch upon in a little bit. We've been built from the ground up. We're working together with AWS in a partnership along with other cloud providers. We're currently having more than 700 paying customers, 4 million downloads, quite a number of GitHub stars. And in the bottom, you can see some of our big customers that are currently leveraging Weaviate to build their AI native apps. Weave has been around since 2019. It's a vector database. We'll touch upon in a little bit today what you can do with it and how it helps you build AI native apps. But before we go into that, I want to introduce you to Travis. Travis, do you want to intro yourself a bit?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Travis Rehl. As Cody described, I'm our SVP of Product and AI for Innovative Solutions. We're a 30-year-old SI based in Rochester, New York, which is like the frozen tundra, if you're familiar with the United States. And we're focused primarily on building, deploying, managing enterprise scalable solutions, specifically with data and ML flair. We focus on SMBs and startups, and we've had the unique pleasure, I'll say it like that, of learning about and getting to know the Weaviate team quite well over the last, I don't know, Byron, maybe a year now, give or take. It's actually slightly interesting when we started our journey of figuring out the right tools and technologies to recommend to our customers for building Gen AI into their either SaaS platform or otherwise. We validated a number of vector databases as our jobs to do, right, and to give the right recommendation to our customers. When we met the Weaviate team, you guys were way smaller. I want to say, I think I joined your Slack group and there was like a handful of people talking, and I started poking questions like Amazon Bedrock and what's this thing over here and when are you gonna do that? And to see you guys go to 4 million downloads, that's a lot more than when we originally met. I just curious, like what has that growth been for your company? How has that impacted you guys? How's it helped shape your product and how people are leveraging AI with Weaviate?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for that, Travis. Like, I remember like starting out back in 2 years ago. We did not have a big community yet, but as we're building an open source product, we have community at heart. We're building from the ground up, but also bottom up. So we build Weaviate for developers, and especially since people are starting to use ChatGPT. Since I want to keep saying last year, but now it's already 2 years ago that ChatGPT got released. All of a sudden, a lot of these kind of companies, they feel like they want to do something with AI, and people understand that it's a lot more tangible to actually get started with it. So we've seen this massive growth and adoption of vector technology and vector databases, and especially in the community that you mentioned, like we saw a huge increase of like downloads, but also people playing around with that. And I think it's funny, like when we first had our first chat, which I think was about a year ago, it was a lot smaller. But at the same time, you were one of the partners that, or one of our current partners that started very early in this process. We were very much an early adopter. What was sort of for you the trigger to look into vector databases at that point?
Yeah. Well, our background is we help SMBs and startups, and we ourselves are an SMB. We're 100 and change people, and we started about a year and a half ago building out AI apps internally for our sales team, for our marketing team, eventually for our engineers. And when we started fiddling with technologies, we recognized that there's particular things we could build out pretty consistently and repeatedly into the product line and to our customers. And so we created a pre-made architecture we call Tailwinds. We'll talk about that more later. That uses Weaviate now actually as a baseline default in the process. But more importantly is we got lucky. And what I mean by that is a year and a half ago, there's GPT and Anthropic, and like there's a couple models out there in the open source community you could play with and get some good output from. And we partnered early on with Anthropic and for ourselves because of the context window. To be honest with you, that was like a big thing for us. Back then. That's gotten better now across the board. But when we did that, and then Amazon invested in Anthropic, everybody started looking around for partners who could build Anthropic or GenAI solutions on AWS. And we kind of like slowly raised our hand. We're like, well, by accident, we fell into this like trap of knowing enough that we can help people. And that's done really well for us over the last year now, right? Within the organization, we've done dozens, if not hundreds, of projects now of different sizes and shapes, from enterprises to startups to just companies who want AI policy documentation, right? And so there's a lot we've learned. I'm happy to share on today's session with the group.
Yeah, yeah, thanks for that. I think, yeah, that's a good segue into sort of our agenda for today. So there's a few topics we want to cover in this session. We want to talk a little bit about the challenges in building AI apps. As you heard from Travis at Innovative, they've gone through those challenges after already being in the field for a while. Then touch a little bit upon how and why vector databases can help. We'll talk a little bit about the qualifications for successful Gen AI projects. How do you know if your project idea actually qualifies to being successful? With some lessons learned, and then go into like how do you actually build a production-ready AI app? And then Travis will share a demo of their architecture, and then we'll have room for Q&A. If you have any questions during, make sure to already drop them in Q&A. We'll try and keep enough time at the end to actually be able to cover most of or all of them, but keep those questions coming. All right, next up, common challenges. So after working in the field for a while, there's always difficult challenges, and especially with new technology, or not really new technology, but new active technology, where a lot of companies exploring AI and especially Gen AI, we see a lot of similar challenges pop up. And just as a quick overview, like building and scaling production-ready AI applications isn't easy. A lot of times there's still legacy techniques like legacy databases. Content is not stored in a perfect way. Storing and searching through that data has its limitations, especially on larger scale. We'll touch upon that a little bit in a second when we talk more about vector databases and why they excel in these areas. A lot of times it's a high barrier for entry, not just on a process or tool silo, but also on roles and and people's work. So before, a couple of years ago, if you wanted to build something with machine learning, you would need data scientists. You would have to train your own models. There was no Hugging Face where you could just take an open source model and fine tune to your own use case and get very good quality results. And another one is data privacy, which is sort of a newer thing as we get to these public APIs like OpenAI's API or like Anthropic. How do we make sure that our data is not used to store and be used for model training? And Travis, I think you've also noticed these kind of the same development challenges with your customers as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen challenges twofold. The first is we meet a lot of companies who try something. They do a POC, they fiddle. And maybe they do like a vectorizer module in Postgres, or they do the homegrown something, or I have a database already, I can use this. We get a lot of that. And while yes, you can for limited use cases, we run into performance issues when they go live. We also run into issues with integration points between LLMs, between use cases. Oftentimes people end up having to customize very specific code for a database they've made for themselves. And it gets just really messy, to be honest with you. And so when it came to that production launch and scaling the organization, there was all of this just crud that just gets made and it gets committed. And the teams and the customers are just trying to like retrain themselves. And they always come to us and say, this is what we got. And our response is, let's delete it, try again, or change it fundamentally. So we see a lot of that, especially when the organization's scaling it out past a POC concept.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I think like it sort of segues to the next. Like building a cool prototype is easy in a day or in a couple of days. If you do a hackathon, if you use GPT-4 and you use some embedding model, you can get very good results across a lot of different domains and different type of use cases. Where before something would take weeks, maybe months, and a whole team, people can generate their code and build something fast. And there's good things that come from that, like being able to fastly iterate and do your testing, having modular architectures that allow you to plug in these different types of functionalities that really helps. And for instance, with Weaviate, what we do is we try to bring models and the database very close to each other by having these modular integrations where Weaviate as a vector database can actually create and generate vectors for you, but it can also take your output, like your search results, and run it through something like ChatGPT or GPT-4, GPT 3.5 to actually build custom user interfaces or build chatbots or build RAG applications. And the good thing is that even with Weaviate, you can easily build that because it's all contained within the database itself. But the next step is more difficult, actually getting that to production. And one of the common challenges we see is, and the customers that I and our company talk to, is that they start small. They start with a proof of concept on either a framework that can do vector search or a database like a legacy database that has vector search support. But then they get issues into scaling and like deployment of all the tools and how do you care for data security and backup and all of these other points. And I think you guys have done that pretty well by finding a structure together with Weaviate to build an application architecture that you can reuse and like covers all of these different challenges.
Yeah, we failed this twice actually internally. Before we started working with customers, we were trying to build out solutions for ourselves, right? The first failure we had was we took a POC on LangChain and we deployed it, and it did not, long term, it did not work well, mainly because LangChain is a very heavy package. There's many ways to solve the same problem. So which one's the right way? Which one's the one that's going to get supported long term? And I know that team's trying to improve it, but we made that mistake. So one of the things we did next was we rolled our own, which was our second mistake. Because every time at this point, we're starting to deploy to customers. And we found is that, as customer data requirements changed or formatting requirements changed, or they added new stuff right to the pot, they always came back to us to edit a script or an ETL function we had made to put content into Weaviate.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake. because we didn't want to be in the business of onesie twosie making some changes to an ETL package. So where we landed was we actually used the Weaviate modules out of the box. So one of the things we really like about the product and how we've sort of standardized on it, it has a bunch of modules that can solve for 90% of standard use cases like chunking, like querying, hybrid search, and more. Vectorizing on the fly, which is really nice instead of writing your own. But more importantly, you put the onus on Weaviate to maintain them. So we could standardize on that without having to like roll our own, nor getting like handheld by a third-party plugin service. So those are some of the failures we had. But once we got past that, it's become a lot simpler to scale it for our customers and to do multiple tenant deployments across the globe.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that correlates to what we're seeing as well. And I think it's one of the reasons why with Weaviate, we really want to be sort of this end-to-end like database that just helps you not to just build like a prototype, but also that can actually carry you all the way to production. And it's great to see that you guys are actually fully leveraging all of Weaviate's functionalities for that. So sort of that ties a little bit into the next of like, why would you then need a vector-based database? I don't know if everyone that's like currently looking know what a vector database is, but last year what we've seen is really sort of the rise of vector databases / the rise of databases with vector support. And I think the list currently of databases capable of doing vector search is above 60. When we started back in 2019, this list was, you can count them on one hand. So whereas most of these developments actually happened last year, with the rise of ChatGPT and vector stores and vector search becoming more prevalent, and people seeing the benefits of using machine learning to turn unstructured data into structured data, but also to be able to search with semantics rather than exact matching, really saw a massive increase of adoption. And the question is, why would you need a vector database at that point? And one of the things that I believe that's one of the biggest questions that we get asked is when to use a vector database and when to choose for what we already have. And I think, Travis, you and I also talked about this in the past, is that whenever you get to a certain scale or whenever your application sort of becomes mission critical in the phase of Gen AI, we just see that other databases are just not up to par quality-wise, but also like latency-wise. And having something specialistic for a very urgent use case almost always makes more sense. Like, can you touch upon like how did you guys choose, or how did you go through sort of the selection phase when scoping out the different solutions that were available?
Well, I think the context here is Innovative, our company. We specialize in 3 particular verticals: financial services, healthcare, manufacturing. We do everything else, but like if you had to tie us down, we said those are the 3 we do really, really well at. And when we started talking to those companies, there's 2 things, if not 3, that came up every single time. One was data security. Who owns my data? Oh my God, is ChatGPT going to train on my content? It happened all the time. Things like, oh, my information has PII. It can't go over the public internet, or our CISO won't allow it. Or the third was, we want flexibility and we want to be able to scale and try something, but whatever we try, we want to be able to grow on, and we don't want to break the bank initially to figure that out. And when we evaluated a number of vector stores, from open source communities to private organizations, of those requirements, it really narrowed it down to Weaviate and a handful of others. And the thing that really set it apart was there's CloudFormation support for Weaviate on the Amazon Marketplace, which is super easy to deploy. It gets deployed on an EKS cluster. Super easy for most companies now to scale and manage an EKS cluster, Kubernetes cluster. It scales really efficiently. So you can run a POC, then you can deploy a staging environment and then a production environment, and it will perform and behave consistently across that stack. So when we narrowed the requirements down, that's where we landed. Now, if you don't care about where your data goes or the privacy and security risks, then like you can use Weaviate Cloud. You don't even have to deploy it on Amazon themselves, right? Like there's lots of options once you get to there. But for us, that's why we chose it.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, just to touch upon a few other points on why you would want to look at specifically a vector database for building Gen AI apps. Like one of the other ones is the enhanced AI ML integration, and it sounds pretty vague, but like there is a lot of topics that like we see a lot of people building retrieval augmented generation applications where you include search results coming from any type of database into or data into a large language model. But being able to do that more efficiently, more effectively in combination with semantics, because people want to type actual questions in the context of a text application, having a system that's able to understand those type of questions and be able to combine and work together with both large language models and embedding models allows for far superior results than we've seen in the past. And I think ChatGPT in a way have shown that, but also more of the chat applications and RAG applications that you see pop up, all of a sudden we can build functionalities that were not accessible to others. So we're democratizing in a way for people to build these integrations themselves.
Byron, I never told you a story, so I hope it's not long. We had a healthcare company, public company of us. I don't know if they want me to share this piece of it, so I'm not going to say who. But they originally came to us among our first customers, and they said, hey, we want a knowledge-based chatbot. Now, it was for helping analysts, not like it's not a support organization. There's an analysis team. They get documents, and they have to like pour through the documents, and it would take them like 8 hours per document, and that's like their KPI item. And they said, hey, we want a chatbot we can ask a question to, and it'll give us the answer, right? What we found was when we did a vector search, there was 10 good answers. I'm making a number up, right? But they're all relevant answers to the question, a relevant piece of content for the question. But the language models would pick and choose,
Yep.
right? It would, and no matter how much you pushed or conveyed the prompt, right, of the language model itself to give you the all 10 or summaries of each 10, sometimes it picked and choose. It gave you 9 or gave you 7 or gave you 11 sometimes, as much as you don't like it, right? We found that that customer, what they truly wanted was vector search. They didn't care about the AI piece. They didn't care about the large language model. They just wanted the results of a natural language request against lots of content in a given motion. And we actually stripped out the language model and just put in Weaviate. And we were able to do it really quickly because of the generative module within Weaviate. Because we could just, with a few lines of code, swap out that piece of it and just return results in Weaviate instead of the Gen AI response itself.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like I really like hearing those stories. I remember, and we'll tell that another day. But like how these modules got built internally was also just like exploring, and we actually developed that first module right before, like the week before ChatGPT dropped. So it's cool to see like how companies today are using those modules right now, and how everything is blown up and being able to build these kind of functionalities. So cool.
Yeah.
All right. Another one of why vector databases are superior to build these kind of Gen AI apps is just the high-speed data retrieval. If you have a system that's built specifically to run with vectors and build from the ground up to be able to store that efficiently and be able to navigate and search through that, it will perform a lot better than if you would do that in a system that's not primarily built for it. And that applies to a lot of different types of databases as well, but definitely also for vector databases. Another one is the scalability in that part. So being able to store vectors, but also objects, and also being able to do things like sharding, replication, building these large enterprise application clusters with multiple nodes for running billion scale search. It's also funny, we had a goal, I think it's about 1.5 years ago, to get to 1 billion scale with Weaviate, because we thought, who was ever going to use 1 billion vectors? But we set it out as a goal for ourselves to support it. We managed to do it because we were able to scale over multiple machines and ramp it up like that. And we finished it. We're like, okay, cool, we can do it. But it's not going to take a while before we see customers do it. And then I think it was only 2 or 3 months later where we got our first customer that was asking for multi-billion scale. So
it's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have. It's a fun technical challenge to work through, but cool to see how fast everything is developing.
Yeah.
And I think the not the last one, but before the last one. So being able to handle complex data, we're seeing more and more companies looking into multimodality. One of our expectations is this year we'll see a lot more of that. Multimodality, meaning that you can convert both text, images, videos, audio data, heat sensor data, any type of data that you could convert with a machine learning model to a vector space, and then be able to cross-search in that. So like you have with Google Lens, you send a photo and you get similar products, but you can also do that other ways around. So you can find textual data with videos or images with text. And we're seeing a lot more of that. And that is also something that's sort of native more to a vector database. I don't know, Travis, are you seeing that with your customers, that you're seeing more like image kind of data possibly ending up in chat systems as well?
We're seeing more image for us, less video, but to be fair, we're not really big into like media. Like we don't do a lot in that industry. We're seeing a lot of image-based multimodal applications in the healthcare space. That's one of our primary pillars. One example we had was a chain of doctor's offices. They wanted to trial the idea of like when a patient comes in, if you go to a doctor, you go in and say, "Hello, I'm here." They take you to a room, they weigh you, they like ask you a bunch of questions, and they go and put you down to the doctor, right? It's kind of at least for me, that's our flow. And their idea was when they weigh you, also take pictures at the same time. And that combination would get stored, and then it could be used to provide more insightful commentary to a medical record system or into a PI personnel file or otherwise. So we're seeing more of that style of application come up.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think it would be cool to see where this all lands in a year or a couple of years from now, as it becomes a lot more easy for people to build these kind of applications, because a lot of these models are also open source. Like Clip, for instance, from OpenAI, it already combines this multimodality of text and images, and we're already seeing that applied in the e-commerce space a lot. So,
yeah, no, I have friends in the e-com space. This and LLMs at Edge are like the most exciting things to them. Yeah.
Right. So that sort of sums up of just a few of the points of why vector databases would be superior for building these Gen AI apps, and specifically around Weaviate. We touched upon a few of these already, like being able to scale to billions of vectors, being able to build native isolated multi-tenancy capabilities. But also one of the features of why a lot of people want to choose Weaviate is because we have hybrid search built in, and hybrid search being actually proper keyword-based ranking combined with vector search. I think we're trying to have that sort of as a default, as we're not dismissing the last decades of innovation in the keyword search domain. But bringing those two together, really, we see a lot of uptick for a lot of quality and results before sending data to large language models in the context of RAG. But also in the context of e-commerce search, we're seeing if you search for a product and you match exactly on a title because you know exactly the model number or the title of that product, it might not semantically be the best product, but having the combination of both keyword matches and semantic matches really helps improve those kind of relevancies. And having that built in from scratch or without any effort out of the box is why a lot of people like to choose for Weaviate. And I think the last important part I want to touch upon here is the community part. So our roadmap is online. We have Travis bugging us sometimes with feature requests and things he wants us to build.
Very true. Yeah.
But we like doing that. Like we would like to build together with the community, for the community, and of course also for our customers and partners. And then lastly, like how AWS and Weaviate integrate, as we'll share, or Travis will share a little bit about that as well. Weaviate's available on the AWS marketplace and integrates natively with both SageMaker and Bedrock. So you can build a full end-to-end in one infrastructure. Closed from the outside, you can build a complete end-to-end Gen AI app. You can install Weaviate through the marketplace, or you can reach out to us and we can help you get that set up. But being able to leverage SageMaker and Bedrock and all of the models that they provide there allows you to just build all your apps within your single AWS account.
Yeah, there's one question.
Yep.
From Pratam. Is a search result from a vector database 100% accurate, or does it give you a list of potential results?
Yeah.
And the short answer is the latter.
It's a good question. So Weaviate runs the vector search with a ANN algorithm, and that stands for approximate nearest neighbors. And the keyword here is approximate. You can tune this approximability. But in general, what we do is we give you the best matching results by not exploring all of the results so that we can return you in a very fast manner. but you're able to control how many of the data objects should be explored while searching. So the short answer is it's the latter. The more longer answer is it's tunable.
Yeah. And you can do things like you can filter based off of the accuracy itself. So make a number up. If you get 10 results and the top 2 are 90+% accurate and the bottom are 80+, 70%, 60%, you can say filter out anything that's below 90. You can push and pull the system to get it closer to 95, 96%. It'll never be 100%, but if you're getting in like the 80s, you're probably getting a really good answer, quite frankly, in most cases.
That's a very good addition. And I think in general, you have to think about how much data do you have. And if you have a lot of data, you can get 100%. It will just take a very, very long time for you to get your answer. But that is with any kind of system that does these kind of vector searches.
Yeah, there's a couple other questions. Lynn asks, in what ways can enterprises customize and adapt the AI native foundation to suit specific industry requirements and unique business processes? So,
yeah, you want to take that? Or?
Yeah, so there's a few ways you can do this. What we're finding is that there are fundamentals to the foundation itself. Typically, it all resides in who owns, controls, audits, and publishes your data, right? Whoever that team is in some capacity, or the teammates or peers to that group, typically are going to control the sort of customization aspects of the business process. So I'll give you an example. For a marketing team may control product information that's going to be public, right? Knowing how that information is put together, the tone of voice that's being used, are they mix and matching different product lines in the same blog post, and you're now publishing that blog post? Well, that piece of content's probably bad to be given to LLM because you're combining context and the LLM may not understand the delta between one product and another. So whoever owns that data needs to be at the table for controlling the process. So it is customizable, but you have to start from that team in particular. There's other questions. Nadia asked about the Weaviate roadmap. Anything in particular you want to highlight?
Ooh, good question. We're working on the roadmap this week. There's a lot of things that we're adding. So we're working on better hybrid search. So we have a few things that are currently missing from the hybrid search implementation. So we're focusing on that. We're focusing a lot on stability of Weaviate, especially on larger cluster setups. We're focusing on our compression techniques. So as we've been around since 2019, we nailed vector search in general. So we're able to do fast filtering, fast search. But now we know that we have models that have a large number of dimensions. So the embeddings have a large number of dimensions. And the larger the dimensionality, the more expensive it is to run, as it runs a lot on memory. So what we're working on right now is we already have a couple of different compression techniques to keep the same or almost the same level of recall and quality, but for like a fraction of the cost by being able to reduce the dimensionality. And we're going to double down on that more. We want to make it cheaper to run. We're going to explore things like separation of storage and compute, for instance, by leveraging cloud. So there's a lot of things coming up, and we'll probably share a few of those soon, both on our roadmap page, but also maybe on a roadmap blog that we're planning. So more to come.
A bunch of questions were revolving around. I'm going to try to combine things. Let's see here. Okay, hybrid search and search partitioning in relation to things like, I'll say, performance and costs. So for example, can hybrid keyword search support inline queries or text queries and dictionary-based queries? And then in likeness to that, can a book of 1,000 pages, when indexed, hybrid search or otherwise, right? What is the performance of that type of experience that someone should expect? and associated costs. So I know it can be hard, but
yeah. It's a very elaborate question. I would love whoever is asking this to reach out afterwards so we can talk a little bit more in depth about it. In general, it is built to be fast, and we're improving it to be even faster. In general, what we do is we rerun 2 searches at the same time. So we have vector search, which is already super performant, And then we have our own data structures to collect, to store our inverted index. So the inverted index is sort of the more traditional way of where we have words and then there are occurrences of where they appear inside of different documents and how often they occur. The inverted index is a custom built solution, and it is already very fast. So we already have customers running on very large workloads being able to still keep 100 to 200 millisecond response times at the same time. For the cost is not increasing that much. It's more on because it's just a columnar store that stores the keywords and their occurrences. That's not too effective on cost. So it really depends on the use case, how large it is and how much data it is. But in general, we have customers running, like, indexing very large pieces of content already.
Yeah, you guys remember also it's text, right? Text is small and cheap, right? In that way. And keep in mind things like a 1,000-page book. Well, you may have like a book with, it's just like a few lines of information, right? And yes, it's a page, but it's not really a full page, is my point, right? So you can't look at it just pages. You gotta look at it on how many words, maybe a different way of thinking about it, that you're indexing, right? And I like to think of it as round numbers. A word is a token. No, it's not perfect, but give or take. A word as a token, and how many tokens are you vectorizing? So how many words are you processing? And that's what you're going to store in a Weaviate cluster.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, in the end, the vector search part is going to be the more expensive part because of the chunking.
Yeah, I think I got most of them.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think also for time's sake, because we do want to see your demo. I will just quickly run through one of the quotes of one of our customers that just came up. Is like, so they were running on these sort of like more legacy kind of setups with not built from the ground up to build on vector search. And they were running there. And after switching to us, they saw like they were able to store a lot more. They were able to search a lot faster. And because of these kind of customers, we're seeing a more adoption of Weaviate and really like working together with customers like one-on-one to help you get the same kind of results and help you out there. And with that, I hand it over to you, Travis.
Yeah. Thank you, Byron. So I'm going to get through the architecture, scaling things, problems we've seen. I'll show you a demo, and then we'll do another round of Q&A.
Yep.
So we're going to innovative, right? And we're once again, we're a premier tier AWS partner. What that means is that we're the highest level of classification of an SI with AWS. There's no higher tier we can go to, unfortunately. I'm sure we would try to get it, knowing my team. And that means that we get to work on all the fun projects that are new and interesting and difficult. So if you go to the next slide, what that means is we like to solve for really complex problems. And what I mean by that is we don't overly focus on chat experiences. Not because they're bad or not useful. They're super useful. They're also really easy to build and scale with technologies like Weaviate. It's like, we can help you do that, 100%. We also like to work on complex problems. And what I mean by complex problems, I'm talking about things like, I love Rube Goldberg machines. If you know what those are, it's like you put the ball on a little dongle and it goes ding, 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 ding. And at the end of this whole thing, it turns on a light switch. It's the most complicated process possible to do the simplest of tasks. And every company has that in some capacity. There's like CRUD, an organization has built up over years of manual process or through system automation or otherwise. And it's really complex processes for the most simplest of tasks. We think AI and Weaviate do a great job of solving for those in particular. And what we're seeing is organizations wanting to do things like ask complicated business, BI type style questions of their data, right? My CEO probably asked me every other day about a new financial forecast. And at the time we were using Power BI, and that was a pain to go and get him new updated numbers every single time. So we made a chatbot that could integrate with our database structure that built pie charts and graph charts. You can just ask questions to it and then leave me alone. There's things like that we like to build. Things we help with the legal organizations, things like finance organizations who are trying to understand different data points. And so that's what we focus on. If you go to the next slide. And what we found is that there's a lot of failure points when you build these applications for customers. I'm going to share a few that we learned early on that we're both not so proud of, but also recognize it's a good thing to communicate. The first is, and I'm not going to go down these in a big list, but the heavy hitters. Who owns your data? Because if you don't, or you don't have the ability to influence the process, then you're playing a fire. Because someone downstream or upstream is going to add content or change content or use a different tone of voice that was never recommended, or insert data in a format that maybe wasn't perfect. Maybe it's a text file, and text file is a text file, but now they added Markdown, and you didn't expect Markdown to be in your content, and now you're regurgitating Markdown in some capacity. So you have to own your data. The second thing is, or at least be able to influence it. The second thing we found was around accuracy. When we first started, a lot of our customers came to us and said, we want 100% accuracy. They actually literally tried to write it in their contracts of us. You will deliver 100% accurate Gen AI technology solution. It's impossible to do that. Literally impossible to do that. I'd never recommend that to anybody. If someone thinks you can do that, they're wrong, in my opinion. Right? And we've learned that we can get really high accuracy, like mid 90 percentiles. Like we can do really, really well, really, really good, but it's never 100%. There's lots of techniques you can build in to mitigate that problem, whether that's rerunning LLM commands and checking outputs, whether that's doing a process part of the way of an LLM and then taking the rest of the process the full way through a more traditional workflow. But to assume an expectation of 100%, not so much. The other sort of smaller thing is around prompt engineering. I think this will become a commodity in the future, to be clear. I think everybody has to just get good at writing prompts. And if you're not today, you will tomorrow. And it's a matter of when you're going to train an organization to be able to do that. And if you're not willing to train them, you'll never be able to improve that accuracy, well, quite frankly. So they kind of hand in hand. You go to the next slide. So we're going to talk about the app now. So the actual architecture. And we're going to use a solution we call Tailwinds. Tailwinds is our innovative pre-made AI architecture that we've sort of pre-built. So it's a Terraform template, among other things, that we can stamp out and deploy for customers and organizations that we think gets people about 80% of the way towards a typical Gen AI solution. So we're going to go over that architecture just because we think it solves for most scenarios. So this is Tailwinds. It is the black square, to be clear, in the middle. And it's a high-level architecture diagram. Obviously, it doesn't have like networking requirements, et cetera, in here. But what you'll find is that we've built a way to consume content through an ETL function that we wrote that integrates with the Weaviate vectorizer module to vectorize content into Weaviate and load it into Weaviate. We built a Lambda function that has a pre-built prompt template to consume content from Weaviate to put it through a chain prompt to give an answer. And that answer is derived from Amazon Bedrock. So we're using, typically our default for Amazon is Anthropic Claude. We do a lot of Cohere now too, by the way, slightly different use cases. But we default Anthropic just for context window sizes. And given the verticals we're in, a lot of that sort of safety type of questions come up, and Anthropic has a great story for safety. And the goal of this architecture is to deploy a RAG solution really, really, really fast, like within an hour, that is scalable and has redundancy. And then we spend the majority of our time customizing this on top. So a good example, you can totally take this as an API endpoint. You see in the middle there is an integration line for Amazon API Gateway. You can take that API Gateway and you could put it into a chat application and call it done. You can have a corporate, internal, private chat in a couple hours and you're done. You can also do things that I think are pretty creative, like in the scenario we're going to show you in a demo. You can load in things like medical records and diseases and descriptions of diseases and ailments that come with them, things that are not chat related, not knowledge base related, but stuff that is industry related into a vector store. And then you can use that as a way to dynamically generate the right content at the right time to perform rules or to write answers to questions that a doctor may have. So it's a slightly different way of interpreting how to use a vector store, but it's really powerful for that use case, which is why we quite like it for some of the things we're seeing. We go to the next slide. So I'll give you an example. It's a real customer. I think this is our third customer when we launched this process. They are a telehealth SaaS company. So that's where they connect doctors and patients over the internet. And they had this big problem with churn. Patients would leave after the very first conversation with a doctor. There was lots of reasons why, but one reason in particular we were asked to help solve was that the doctor and the patient would meet, and the patient would get annoyed at the doctor. What we found is that the patient, when they signed up for the portal, they fill out a bunch of information, who they are, their background, how they're feeling, all this stuff. And then they would meet the doctor next day or whatever, and the doctor would never read it because it's just data points. It's just like a list of content. They would just like skim it real quick, or they wouldn't look too deeply, or it wasn't digestible for them. And so the doctor would meet the patient, and they would ask the same questions again, and then the person would get annoyed because like I just paid you to ask me the same questions that I just fill out a form, and they would leave. And so what we built for them, go to the next slide, was a combination of things. So we took, for this doctor's office, they're like a general practitioner. So they had specialties they were really, really good at. So we took in medical definitions about their specialty, the types of diseases and things and ailments that they treated that's specific to them, because every doctor's office is a little bit different. And we connected that with their EMR patient portal, their PII data patient portal. And what we ended up doing was we're able to dynamically generate a prompt where we take in a little bit about the patient, who they are, their background, the form they submitted. In that form, it said, why are you here today? And the person would type in why they're coming to see the doctor. And then that would then do a semantic search against Weaviate to find the most closely resembled illnesses, diseases, issues, things they should do, treatments they should do, things that are most related to the problem that they're trying to solve. Now, not perfect, it's not 100% accurate. But we package those two things together into our doctor's note that gets sent to the doctor beforehand. That's a background of who the person is, but more importantly, suggested, not declarative, suggested issues or things they should consider as a part of meeting this person for the very first time. Skipping that whole intake form the very first time again, meeting that person. So we did that for them. This nearly eliminated, you never eliminate all frustrations of people, but nearly eliminated that particular churn reason code that they were having.
Yeah, this is so cool, and I think we're gonna see more and more of this. Like I think when we in the past discussed this use case, like suggested condition might be something that people like would be hesitant to follow because of hallucinations, because of like not having 100%. But imagine like a couple of years down the line, like this is great. Like why would they might not even have to meet with like the teledoctor sort of in a way,
right? Well, keep in mind the fact that we're saying it's suggested, not declarative, should imply or be accepting to the business that it's not 100%.
Yeah.
Right? Just word choices like that and setting expectations can help, right, with the deployment.
Definitely.
You want next slide? All right, so we're going to do, this is a sample of the architecture I'm about to demo to you guys. And then after that demo, then we'll pause for a Q&A. So what you're seeing here is that scenario, slightly modified, right, to be honest. So what we're doing is we're taking in patient history. And in this scenario, we're taking in literally a patient background. In my demo, also taking in a transcript of a patient doctor already meeting the first time. It's going to chain prompt to summarize the transcript. It's also going to compare against Weaviate to look for what's called an ICD-10 code. These are medical codes. There's like 40,000 of these things, which apparently is a really big problem in the healthcare industry because people have to there's like 10 ways to search for ICD-10 codes and people get it wrong all the time. There's a whole industry of people whose sole job is to fix those codes for people when they write it down wrong. And so we automated it through Weaviate by giving, here's your code, here's a disease, here's example ailments or problems that come of it, here's example customers or users, right, who have had this in the past. We put all that in Weaviate for ICD-10 codes. And what it'll do is it'll query for the transcript. In the transcript, it'll find the conversation, the medical issues that are occurring. It'll take that segment. It'll then compare for the ICD-10 codes, return that, and it'll package it up as a JSON response And then for this customer, back then gets inserted into an EMR record system, the medical record system for the company. And so now the doctor literally just has a meeting with the customer or the patient, I should say it like that. And they hit stop record and they walk out, and within like 5 minutes, whatever it is, it's all updated and correctly coded in their medical record platform, which would take them like an hour or two, right, to do before.
Awesome.
So I think I should take it now. Yeah, so I just kind of just walk through this.
This one, so you can take over.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a screen share. I'm going to enhance as best I can. So this is a little Gradio app that we ship with every Tailwinds deployment we do for a customer, and it's just for testing. It gives a bunch of the API options so you can fiddle with prompts and so forth and see results. We have this thing called a domain. That is a Weaviate index. See, we have lots of indexes in here because our internal system. But we have ICD-10 codes from 2023. So that's what we're comparing from Weaviate for our RAG, for our semantic search. And then I have a prompt. Typically in code, in Lambda, this is being made dynamically. So we're taking the form output from the user, we're inserting it here. And then we're taking the transcript from the doctor-patient conversation. And then what we're doing is we are giving it some processing instructions. For example, I want to output as JSON. I want a summary of the doctor's note and the ICD-10 codes. And I gave an example of a JSON response that I'm expecting to see. There's some smaller things in here. We have the ability to force a semantic search. In this scenario, I'm forcing a heart attack. You don't have to do that, but probably not a good thing to do, but I am doing that. And you can also increase the certainty threshold. One of the questions earlier was around accuracy. This is our accuracy button. So we can change from 0 to 100% accurate, 0 accurate to 100%. We can say, of the results from Weaviate, only show me the ones that will show me this level of filtering, right? This level of accuracy. So for this conversation, I'm doing a 50% accuracy. It doesn't have to be, but you get the idea. And then I'm hitting go. So this doesn't take like 4 or 5 seconds, just give or take, to run. You'll see this shot size on the right-hand side. That's the total number of responses Weaviate's allowed to provide back, right, to the organization, to the solution. You can ramp that up if you want more, and it coincides with the amount of accuracy that comes of it. And you'll find here is the doctor's note. So as a female patient, chest discomfort, blah, blah, blah. It found the ICD-10 codes associated to it, and then it has a list of the ICD-10 codes associated that will then get inserted into the EMR record system. This may look complicated, but keep in mind, this is simply RAG that you've probably looked at and poked at in documentation for chat experiences. It's exactly the same flow. The delta is, what is the use case you're solving for with it? And in here, for us, this gets sent out programmatically, right, through that Lambda function in our Tailwinds architecture. And so it can be done repeatedly and integrated back into a system. So that's like the demo really quickly of it all working. This is hitting Amazon Bedrock. This is hitting our internal deployment of Weaviate here at Innovative. And you get an interface just like this, by the way. There's Gradio, there's Streamlit, two probably my two more favorite right now for really quick POC style interfaces like this. Not for production use, once again, but good for testing prompts and validating ideas.
Yeah, for sure.
Byron, do you mind pulling back up the deck real quick and go to the architecture slide?
Thanks for the... let's see, I need to hide this one.
You go to
this one?
Yeah.
Or the other one?
The other one, if you could. The one thing I want to hit on really quickly is scaling. So we talked about production scale. There's one thing about data coming in, and then there's like IO and processing of that data. So we pick and choose our services carefully. Everything you see here is serverless, with the exception of Weaviate. Lambda serverless, API gateway serverless, etc. Right? What we like about Weaviate, though, is that it can scale very easily on an EKS cluster. So as we find for our customers is we can deploy a really small Weaviate cluster on EKS on AWS. It's cheap, it's fast, it integrates really well. And then as we ramp up through a staging production deployment and through like an A/B test or a blue-green deployment for a production workload, we can then ramp up Weaviate really easily. And you can build in some really simple auto-scaling for an EKS cluster to manage Weaviate really well.
Yeah.
So that's one of the ways we help for scaling and for performance efficiency.
Perfect. Thanks for that addition.
Yeah.
Let me get back to where we were in the slides. We're almost coming up on the hour. So just a quick recap of what we talked about. So we talked about challenges in building and scaling AI applications, why AI native solutions are better, or why you would choose for an AI native solution over an already existing solution. Depends on your use case, depends on your requirements, but in general, when it comes to quality of results or performance, something AI native will probably fit that use case better. I think a very good point from Travis, the qualifications for a successful Gen AI project. As it is so easy to start, it's also easy to get lost in it too quick and think that what you have built as a proof of concept can just fly to production. That's not always the case. So it's good to run the qualification and see if you need to maybe take ownership of your content first before thinking about building a full end-to-end Gen AI app. And then lastly, with showing off tailwinds and like how innovative is leveraging Weaviate, how to build an AI app. I think with that, we can head to the question sections before we close things off. Are there still any open pending questions?
Yeah, there's a few. So there's one question around: are there any pre-built UIs for tuning Weaviate search, like the one I just showed, frankly? Eric, we built that ourselves. It didn't take very long. That's probably like we did in like a couple hours on Gradio. It's super simple. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at Gradio or Streamlit for the same reason. However, I would be very surprised if in the GitHub community there was not an already made one. So I would look first there. If you can't find it either, you're welcome to ping me. I'm happy to take a look for you myself, show you what I can find. Richard asked around depersonalization in the AI feature, specifically things like, is there anything that works to help in like medical providers, practitioners, their bedside manner, and patient relationships? I interpret that as, I think in the world of ChatGPT, where you're writing prompts and it's giving you answers, it can feel a lack of personalization. And I think people in the past have tried to do things like, impersonate as X, and here's some history about a person or content, right? That you should change the response to better match this request. I think the reality is that these solutions can't and shouldn't try to replace the human interaction. I think the goal is simplify it. I'll give you a good example. When my wife was having our kids were in the hospital, the doctor comes in and she's got like this giant pamphlet of paperwork, and she's like pouring through it, trying to find like, what's my wife's name? And like, what is she here for? And all these different things. And I just remember that being a really poor experience. It didn't matter given the height of the moment, but I just remember like that doctor's doing that all day. Right. And so they're in today's world, things are not personalized because of just how much time we have to consume content. And if we can make that simpler through solutions like this, I think you inherently find time to have personalized experiences.
Yeah, I agree with that point.
Yeah. And then Nadia asked the question, Byron, around hallucination protection and accuracy rate. What are like techniques and things we can do to improve or reduce hallucinations and accuracy?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think in general, it's very hard to find hallucinations if you're not extensively testing your solution. I think RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, is a technique where you leverage already having your data. So having your own company's data or the company that you work for, and being able to serve that as a context to the large language model to scope it to only answer on those questions already solves a lot of the hallucinations, but it doesn't eliminate it. So one thing we recommend is just accepting the fact that right now we're in a state where we could have hallucinations. And one thing we recommend is both leveraging Weaviate also as a cache for your large language model, but also as an audit store. So imagine you use Weaviate to build a RAG application, and a user asks a question that could be a personalized question, or it could be on a customer service page, and someone asks, how do I solve X? Weaviate would search for the top 10 results or top 20 results, how many you want to feed into the large language model. It will then use that information to the large language model, which then will return a response. If you store both the user input, the objects it's selected to run inside of the prompt, and then the response, and store that, you can use that both as a cache, so you don't have to rerun the large language model query if someone asks the same or a certain level of similar question. But also you're able to build something in UIs where people can mark things as wrong or correct. And that allows you to actually keep an audit log of, you will always know what you serve to a certain customer with what input data and what output data came back. So there's not a short silver bullet right now, a short answer or silver bullet to prevent hallucinations. I think we just need to be aware of that they are here and how to best deal with them and how to best test to whether you're vulnerable for these kind of hallucinations in your app.
Cody, there's one more question. I think that's it, if you don't mind. From Kai, does or will Weaviate provide built-in embeddings like AWS Kendra, or do we have to use our own? And if we do, which embedding model is the best in your opinion?
Also a good question. So as Weaviate, we've always tried to be agnostic around embeddings. So we support you building your own models. We support using open source models from Hugging Face or wherever you might find them, and also embedding providers. So within Weaviate, you have those three options. You can bring your own vectors. You can use one of our vectorization models that actually downloads a model off of Hugging Face and then runs that locally next to your Weaviate instance. And then third is the embedding provider. So connecting with SageMaker, Google, like AWS, like we have support for a large number of different third-party integrations as well. To my question, what's the best model? The best model depends. It depends on your domain. It depends on what kind of use case. So if you have a use case where people type a lot of large text, like long input queries, you need a different model for an e-commerce space where people type 1 or 2 words. So it really depends on whether you use multilingual or not. So there's not a short answer to what is the best model. But what we try to do at Weaviate is work together with companies and help you figure out what the best model is for your use case.
I'll just throw in there real quickly. We like to use as default Amazon Titan. It's an embedding model. It is nearly the same price as like an OpenAI embedding. It sits alongside AWS, and it's like a one-line add-on to the Weaviate installation.
That is definitely one of the options, yeah. All right, are we through the questions?
I think so.
All right, then last off, you can get started with Weaviate for free. It's open source, so you can run it locally on Docker. You can install it in your own Kubernetes cluster. But if you want, we offer free sandboxes, so you can play around with it and get yourself familiar. You can build that prototype and then take it to production. Make sure to scan the QR. It will be in the slides afterwards and will be shared as well. And with that, I want to thank you all. Travis, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for taking the time in your wind/snowstorm. Hopefully everything will be all right. Thanks so much for taking the time. We really appreciate working with you guys over at Innovative, and looking forward to the next one.
Thanks, Byron. Thanks, Cody. And thanks, everybody, for coming and hanging out.
Absolutely. Byron and Travis, thank you both so much for everything that we've crammed into this last hour today. I know I've taken away a lot, and I know we got a ton of questions. So I want to remind our audience, we will be sending these questions over to Byron and Travis, and they'll be able to take a look at them. And if there were any that didn't get addressed today, hopefully they'll follow up with a post-webinar email. So once again, Byron and Travis, thank you both so much for joining us today on Techstrong Learning.
Thank you so much, Cody.
Thank you.
All right, so a couple final things before I release everyone. Today's session was recorded, and we'll be sending it to you via email here shortly. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars, and it will be in the on-demand section. We will be selecting 2 of our most engaged attendees to win a $50 Amazon gift card. So thank you for your chats, your questions, and of course, to become eligible still, just fill out our post-webinar survey. We would love to hear your feedback. I'd like to thank Weaviate for sponsoring our program today. And to our audience, thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. We appreciate your time, and we hope to see you at a future Techstrong Learning Experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect. Thanks again, Byron and Travis.
Thank you.